Martinez. Today I have a special guest, Mr. Josh Culler, out of somewhere in Indiana now. Hobart.
Still Northwest Indiana, still home. Out in Cedar Lake now. I moved a little further south.
Somewhere in Indiana.
Yeah.
So me and Josh have a very long history together, and we had funny story is how circles work. But we went to high school together. I'm 1 year older than Josh, but I had a bunch of classes with him in wood shop, and we saw each other in high school a lot. Class of 2011 for Josh here. But man, it's just been a long time since then.
I was gonna say you missed out on the best part of our story is working in Portage together.
I was gonna get there.
Yeah, okay. That's the best part.
We went to school together, so I've known, and his older sister. I can't remember.
Hannah. Yeah,
I remember your mom's name, but I can't remember your sister's
name.
Hannah. Hannah. This is terrible. Mad at me. I was going to say Susan. I'm like, no, it's not Susan.
That's my mom. Yeah, you're good. It's been a long time, dude. It's 12 years now for me. No, yeah, 12 years. 13 years. Holy crap.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And then we went to college together too. Mm-hmm. Our short stint at college.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then we worked two summer jobs at a place called Tango, which is kind of funny. But yeah. I saw a plumber. He said he's been working there 25 years now or something like that.
Yeah, he's been there a while. I still get Bears tickets from him every once in a while.
Do you really?
Season, yeah. He's still got the season tickets. So.
Oh man, I gotta hit up that connection.
Yeah.
But man, I don't know about the Bears, but it's cold. I left Indiana, and I don't miss the cold, and I'm good. Mm-hmm. But let's move on the story. But me and Josh have had a long-standing history together for a long time when we were growing up, and then even after we grew up. And we have a lot of stories that we'll never mention again.
Lots. Countless.
Interesting story is that Josh got into real estate after that point, and then I got into real estate a couple of years later. But you've been doing real estate stuff for a very long time now.
Yeah.
Like when did you start that?
Yeah, that was literally like I went from because I was working in Tanco and also because that was part-time, and I was also driving forklifts in Chicago. So that was like 2 years out of high school. And I went straight from that to working with our good friend, the Cavenders. And like I was doing all kinds of stuff for them. And I went straight to doing that like right afterwards. And I did that for 6 or 7 months. And then I got hired by Gary Harper to work with him and their organization, their wholesaling organization. So it's 12 years now that I've been in this industry, which is a very long time. It's kind of crazy. So it's been a while. So
you've been in longer than I have. I started about 6 years ago. I kind of went a different path, but you've been in real estate for a very long time, and in wholesale. Gary, Indiana, stomping ground for that market.
Yeah. Yep.
So a lot of people don't know Gary. Can you tell everybody a little bit about Gary and why people love Gary as a whole?
Yeah. I mean, so like I did a lot. So to be clear too, like when I was working with these organizations, I was running their marketing. So there's a lot of like different things that were going on back then than go on now. Like it's a completely different issue. Even you entering the space 6 years ago, I mean, the changes are crazy. So a lot of it does have to do with that. But Gary's just such a, well, first of all, like it got hit twice. I don't know the deep history of it, but it did get hit twice during the 2000s. Of course, 08 was one of those. And then it was earlier, a couple of years before that, with some sort of a tax bill that got passed or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And because of that, so Gary was known for being like one of the crime capitals of the United States at that point, but it was also a very, very good market for rentals. Now, good market is subjective because obviously, like, given the type of market it was, you're going to have a lot of crime and stuff like that. So, but it's nearly like a very, very high percentage of rental market versus, homeowners. So lots of rental opportunities there. And of course, being in Northwest Indiana, right outside of Chicago, and you're competing with those markets, which is, going to be double or triple whatever the going rate is over in Indiana, 30 or 45 minutes away. The price points of the homes were just, you and I have heard stories of people buying homes in Gary for $1. Like, no joke, $1 they bought a whole property for. There's all kinds of like different stories that are like that. Your average price would be $12,000 to $15,000 you could buy a house for. Of course, you're going to flip it and that sort of thing, but you're going to put a renter in there for $1,000 a month, and it's just like, you're not at the 1% rule. You're like 2 or 3, sometimes even 4% rule at that point. So it's just a great market. And they got hit with these, recessions, that sort of thing, and like almost all of Gary got cleared out. What's funny, Daniel, there's 2 markets in Gary. So there's a lot of like, it's a really big like geographical location. A lot of people don't understand like how big it actually is. And the north side of it, right on the beach, is Miller Beach. There's $1 million homes on Miller Beach with a Gary, Indiana address, which is crazy to some people. And then I actually my first home that I bought was in Calumet Township, which you know where that is. It's on the very south side of Gary. And that's a homeowner's market. There's like, we had a full acre of land. We had great neighbors around us. I would say it's probably like an A- neighborhood, that sort of thing. Like, just really, really good neighborhood. But
and you have the middle.
Yeah. And then you have the middle. So the closer into downtown that you got, downtown Gary is where it got like really, really sketchy. But even so, to this day, that's very vacant. However, it is still a very good rental market, and real estate investors love it. You and I, I know some of the people that do this, but I still know people that buy properties in Gary, Indiana for, pennies on the dollar, and they turn them into rentals, and, they're doing really well with them. It's still a very like stable thing for a lot of people. You just kind of got to know the market and that sort of thing. But you could take that kind of philosophy and kind of equate it just in a little bit of a different mannerism to a lot of the markets in Northwest Indiana, because of the fact that it butts up against Chicago. So you're dealing with a very, very like conservative states, and then you have Chicago and Illinois on this side, which is across the state line, less than 30 minutes from downtown Chicago. It's kind of crazy. So, you're competing with that.
A lot of people like Indiana for the tax advantages and the cheap cigarettes.
Yes. And cheap gas, the cheap sodas. You don't get, what is it, the beverage tax and stuugh like that. Yeah,
and horseshoe. Don't forget horseshoe.
Yeah, and the horseshoe. Yes. Hey, we got the Hard Rock now, so
yeah, a burr. But yeah, there's a lot of different. I'm glad you for everybody here that wants to invest in rentals. I'm glad you kind of synopsis Gary a little bit, because a lot of people don't know anything about Gary, and this is like something we pass by it every day.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is, dude, it used to be, and this is something you could take just directly out of a history book. It's like, it used to be one of the most thriving markets in the country, because it's such a prime, like, you think of where we're at. We always, you moved away, but this is like, we always say that, you really can't not get a direct flight anywhere from Chicago. So, and Gary's right next to Chicago. So this whole market, this area that we call the armpit because of Lake Michigan, literally shaped like this, it's very industrial. The place that you and I worked during the summers when we were younger, that's right next to Gary, Indiana. Very industrial, a lot of the steel mills, a lot of oil factories, stuff like that. It's just such a great place for the industrial, and then right next to Gary, you have East Chicago that has one of the largest BP plants in the country. It's a very, like, there's a lot of jobs here, and there's, quite a bit going on, even though the city's vacant, even though a lot of that area is, hit with poverty and that sort of thing. It's a really weird market, really weird situation that we're used to, but it's like, you really think about it, it's like, this is kind of interesting the way this works,
So I thought it was interesting to me because, like, I lived there my whole life, but you really understand like the demographics of like adulthood and adult jobs and all that stuff. So you become of age, so you actually start working a job and commuting and all that stuff. And like everybody that lives in Indiana worked in Chicago at some point. Like, you just made that commute. It is what it is. Even my brother lives in Valpo. He makes the commute every day.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people do that. And Valpo's an hour and a half away, maybe even further than that some days with traffic. But my dad, I mean, you know, my dad, he's worked in downtown Chicago now for almost 35 years. And we've lived in Northwest Indiana the whole time. And we lived in, you and I both grew up in Hammond, and Hammond is like, sometimes if you take the Skyway, it takes them less than 25 minutes to get to Chicago. So people will, you know, because Chicago salaries are going to be far superior to working in North. I mean, you have corporate world, right? Like, and that's where my dad's been, is in corporate world. And the salaries are just so much better in Chicago. However, like, the cost of living is so much different from Chicago to Northwest Indiana. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people benefit off of that, including my family.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about, you ran the marketing arm for the real estate business. Let's talk a little bit about marketing, because I think this is this is kind of like your like
my niche, my specialty.
It's your thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about marketing for real estate, and then we'll talk about marketing in other ways for investors. So marketing for real estate, I know you said you did that for your company when you worked over there. Now you ran like the list, skip tracing, pulling the data, all that stuff. You're like the
dude. You know what's funny? So everybody talks about that stuff. When we were in our heyday, we were doing anywhere from 250 to 300 deals a year, and the market was so different because acquisitions back then, I mean, we're talking like 2013 through about late 2017 going into 2018. So that time frame, marketing for us was building buyers lists, and it was creating a reputation in our marketplace. We did very little direct to seller marketing. Acquisitions was a bunch of people in a room and some VAs overseas. That, you know, VAs really weren't a hot thing back then. So we kind of discovered it because we were a little bit of a larger organization.
Yeah.
Acquisitions was placing bids on HUD, auction, MLS. That's what acquisitions was. So then you'd lock down a property, you know, HUD would accept your offer. You lock down a property for $500 earnest money. You market it for 30 days. You try to, you know, attach you're wholesaling, but it's kind of like what everybody calls reverse wholesaling. So like, we have a property, every day we would come in and we'd have a list of like 30 to 50 properties, and we would just spend the whole day trying to attach a property to a buyer, property to a buyer, property to a buyer. And that's all it was. And so the marketing arm of it, that's where like what I'm into today is the content marketing side of things, social media, YouTube, podcasts. I mean, we started social media and podcast to build our buyers list. That's what it was meant for. So we would get guests on, people that could potentially be buyers for us, and we would trap them on an interview for 30 minutes and then, you know, chit chat with them for the next 30 minutes to try to get them to be a buyer for our buyers list and convince them of our properties and stuff like that. That was the deal. It was very much different. So to answer your question, like the skip tracing thing, even like, you know, I know it's going away, but the text blasting and cold calling stuff, like we never did any of that stuff. There's just none of that back then. So
I think it's interesting because like when I started, that's what it was. Like we were doing with the seller, and I think, man, that's like we didn't even do any of that.
Yeah, right when you were coming in is when things started to shift. Because I mean, there was probably like, I mean, so that organization consisted of, you know, if you're in our industry, you probably know, you know, David Richter, Gary Harper, a guy named Wayne Schaefer, Tom Olson. We were all a part of that organization running that thing. It was a monster machine. And then late 2017, it, you know, when the market kind of shifted, there wasn't really a crash per se, but it was a big shift. And I remember walking in one day that, you know, into the acquisitions room that I told you about. And the leader of that department was like, there's no properties on HUD. Like just all of a sudden there's no properties. And I literally was like, what do you mean there's no like at that point, they're placing thousands of bids. I'm talking thousands of bids on properties every single week. And they said, there's nothing on HUD right now. And we really can't find anything good on auction or MLS. So then we had to shift and start doing direct to seller marketing. And it was a hard shift, dude. It basically like made the organization kind of fall apart at that point, and everybody kind of split, went their own ways, that sort of thing. But it was different. It definitely like shook the whole organization and rattled us when that shifted. So
that is insane. It's insane how overnight it just shut off. That's insane. It's insane to me.
Yeah, it was crazy. We had no clue because like this was like, I think this was a Thursday that one happened, and on Wednesday we had locked down like 2 or 3 properties because I remember getting added to the spreadsheet. And that was like the last ones that we really added to the spreadsheet that we had. It was different, man. It's crazy.
Did you stop doing real estate on that side after that pivot and change? You went straight to the content side?
Yeah. So like at that point, then, so long story short, we had all started a mastermind, a real estate mastermind together during when we were in that organization. And this was before like everybody was starting education, programs. Like there was a very small handful of people that had actual educational program where you could like do coaching with them. You could do events on site with them, masterminding, that sort of thing. Now everybody has all that. And we had started an event where people would come to our office and we would teach them how we do what we do. And that was pretty much it. So the philosophy was like the one who, educates the market, dominates the market. And that was kind of the mindset going into it. So we started that, we started events, then we had a mastermind going. And at the peak of that, there was maybe 35, 40 members a part of that. And then once that wholesaling organization split up, the owners of all the education piece, the wholesaling piece, they all kind of swapped shares, that sort of thing. And I went to run the mastermind because I was highly invested in it at that point.
Yeah.
And so I ran the mastermind for 2 years. And all this during this time, like this whole time, even being a part of that wholesaling organization, I was always working on content. You could track back to like, I mean, I could link them here, but like you could track back to our first interviews that we ever did with each other, the first podcast and the YouTube videos and that sort of thing. And all of those would get sent to our buyers. All of them would get sent to, building relationships. And that was meant to cultivate relationships. So I've always been in and around the media side of marketing and, took that into the mastermind. And then March of 2019 is when I went full time into doing this. So
I started my podcast 2021.
Yeah.
2021.
Yep.
And I saw the pivot and change into what the power of the podcast brought in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I kind of did it. It wasn't really like it wasn't necessarily like I wanted to do it 100%. It was more like I saw the opportunity and I was like,
Sure.
let me just run it.
Sure. Yeah. And that's why we do a lot of things. I mean, that's a good teaching lesson too, is because like, and here's the thing is at some point you discovered why you're doing it in the first place, right?
Absolutely.
Like that you discover that. That's the important part. So you are actually an anomaly because most people that start something like that, whether it's a YouTube channel, they start doing social media content or a podcast, anything in marketing, they get told it at a mastermind or like they see somebody doing it that's in their industry and like they're like, I can do that too. So they start it up, but they don't really know why. They don't have a reason for it. Then they stop it after a couple months because they got excited and bought all this camera gear, invested all of their time into it, and then realized, well, this isn't as easy as I thought it was. Plus, why am I doing this in the first place?
I'm not getting paid.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not getting a return on my investment that I'm making with my time or my money. But for you discovered that reasoning. And that's like a principle that I try to teach everybody is like, if you're going to start any of this stuff, don't just start it just because somebody told you to. Start it because you have a reason for it. You're using it as marketing for HiveMind, and that's the purpose for it. So anybody that's starting a podcast, anybody that's starting social media or YouTube or whatever, writing a book, email list, it needs to be a very specific reason, and because you're leveraging it as marketing, and that's the important thing at the end of the day. So
yeah, I think a lot of people, they overcomplicate it, and
they do.
If you go listen to episode 1, it's terrible. Like a lot of people,
and that's okay. Yeah, look up your favorite influencer and go back to their very first like piece of content they ever put out, and that'll give you a little bit of confidence. Go look up an Alex Hormozy or Orion Pineda and see what their very first piece of content was that they put out. And I promise you'll die laughing and be like, okay, I get it. It's a commitment. You get better over time. I get it. Thanks. That's how it works.
So let me ask you this. Your business model now kind of coordinates with management, producing of podcasts. How do you come up with ideas with topics to cover with your guests? Because a lot of people, they may struggle with like, I don't even know what to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a really good conversation to have. There's my answer, like if we had this interview 2 years ago, I would have given you some good pointers and tips on doing it. And then even today or last year or whatever, like the answer changes because of some of the tools that we have. And I'll get to that in a second. The quick, short answer is depending on, for instance, like HiveMind, you guys have customers. Generally speaking, the type of topics that I would be doing, and that's not just on podcasts, that's on social media. It's on, maybe you're going to write a book. Like this is all dictation of what topics to do. Is the hard factual data is answering questions that your prospects, your leads, and your clients have. So a great lesson for if you're marketing to motivated seller leads, you're a wholesaler, you want to put some video content out. You don't want to start educate. Like I get this a lot, Daniel. Like people will say, I don't want to start education. I don't want to like be a guru or a coach or anything. I just want to get deals. That's all I want. But I know I need to do social media. I know there's opportunity there. But I still don't know what to talk about because I don't want to just tell people how to do what I do because I'm creating competition, that sort of thing. My go-to answer for that is you probably know if you've been in this industry for at least 6 months to a year, you've done a few deals, you've talked to sellers, that you have questions that these sellers have asked you. That's your topics. So a topic might be if you're on a phone call with somebody and they say, so Daniel, what's the difference between you as a wholesaler and a realtor? Bingo. That's a video topic. That's a podcast topic, whatever. Daniel, like, I know that you say you can buy with cash. What does that mean? Like, you actually bring in a bag of cash to closing and stuff like that? What does that actually mean? That's a topic right there. So the video there is you're explaining what cash offer means. You're answering questions that your potential clients or your clients have. And so with podcasts, it's very similar. Now, a little bit of a ninja trick, Daniel, that I actually just discovered like a couple weeks ago that's really, really cool to use is ChatGPT. Obviously, like that's one thing. You could just say like, I'm Daniel and I do this and I'm an expert in this. Give me 25 video topics or 25 topics for podcasts. And then it'll give you can say 1,000 topics and it'll give you 1,000 topics. But a better method to do this is that if hopefully you have your own website, hopefully you've been on podcasts, you have your own podcast or whatever, take links. Let's just say, for instance, like I wanted to do one on Daniel and I said, like, I need 50 topics for Daniel to do podcasts on. Here's his expertise. I'm going to take your bio on your website, the link to that page, paste it right there. I'm going to take your homepage, copy that link, paste it. And then like if you've been on a YouTube video, you've been on a podcast with another host, I'm going to have the link for that. And I'm going to paste like as many links as I can of Daniel being the core of that, like kind of centerpiece there on the website or the piece of content that I'm linking to. Hit enter, give me 50 topics that Daniel talks about a lot. And it'll give me 50 topics right there that is solely based, not just them guessing what your expertise is, but they're actually going through all the data and the content that's on your About Me page. It's on your homepage. It's on the interview you did with Josh, all of it. And it's going to list you out 50 topics right there. Bang. Easy money.
So I'll do you one better. So this is what the new update with the GPT-4 that was just like, this is hot off the presses information. So I just brought on a new co-host and he was messing with ChatGPT and he did it. And he essentially Google searched me in there, and we did this with a recent guest. And I usually free flow all my episodes.
Yeah.
But he's like, it was his first episode doing it.
It was a little research. Yeah.
He did a little research. So he did ChatGPT research, and a partner came up from the research on ChatGPT that came up organically through the conversation. And after the episode, he's like, dude, look at question number 6. I was like, dude, how did ChatGPT find this?
Oh, it knew that there was a part. Oh, okay.
It found something that we came up organically in the conversation that was totally off the wall, but ChatGPT found it and had it as a question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. You can get super creative with it, but that's what I'm saying too, is you ask that question. And my thing is like, dude, think about it a little bit, be resourceful. Like there's an infinite amount of ways that you could create topics. First thing I do is like, just think about like, I tell people this all the time. Obviously, you have these tools that can create you those lists, and then you need to edit them, like make them, kind of curated to you. But if you just sit down and write like 1 or 2 topics down, it'll start to flow. You'll be able to do the next one, the next one, the next one. Normally, the hard part is when you get like 20, 25 pieces of content deep, and you're like, I've already talked about this. But you got to remember too, the thing is that like, if you pick any of your favorite influencer that's out there putting content out, they normally only talk about a core like 4 to 7 things. It's just in different messaging, different context, different stories, just kind of like, reframing it in a different way, contextual to the person that they're talking to or whatever it is. But it's all centered around like 4 to 7 core topics that they talk about. And the thing is that creates consistency. It creates consistency in the audience that you're trying to reach. It creates that consistency in their mind that like, oh, Josh said it this way before. And you never know, like if I say something to your business partner, Daniel, a certain way, but it didn't make sense to you, but then I say it in a different context, the same story, same thing I'm trying to get across, but different context, it may click in your brain because all of our brains work different. They receive content slightly different from everybody else. So you continue to put that consistent message out there. So even if you think like, I've already done a video on the difference between me and a realtor, we'll do another one, use a different case study, use a different context, different story, and that's all fresh content. So
no, one of the things I love about this is that as you do this more and more, you come up with like your own internal script that you create on the fly whenever you have certain questions come up.
Right.
And it comes out the same in your mind, but you said it totally different, and then the color of your shirt might have
exactly. Yeah, you just change your environment, the color of your shirt, different hat, like it changes it all. Yeah, you're right.
It's whole new content from there. I might have said this 10 different times, but I said it 10 different ways.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And like I said, go like seriously, if you want to fact check me on that, go to your favorite like top 3 influencers, consume like 10 pieces of their content, and it's all going to be centered around some sort of form of messaging that they try to get across as a whole topic. And you can do the same thing. So
yeah, I've been targeting, I've been teaching like different things in different places.
Yeah.
Because of the audience type.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're going to curate that, obviously the thing about that too, Daniel, is that like you specifically asked like podcast topics, and then I kind of went into like video topics. So the thing is obviously, if you're marketing to motivated seller leads, you're not going to start a podcast directed towards motivated seller leads because it's pointless. That's not the medium in which they're choosing to consume content from you. Typically it's going to be search based, or it's going to be based upon like either popping up in their feed, or you have content on your Facebook page because they're going to go check you out there after you've told them your name and that sort of thing. But YouTube content, it's SEO driven. So like putting the titling out there of the difference between a wholesaler and a realtor, and then somebody searches that, your video comes up because it's geo-targeted in your market or whatever, you're instantly building credibility with them. So it's all about the medium too. Like I'm not going to be putting a podcast out directed towards motivated seller leads, trying to tell them, how I can buy their house. Like it's not the medium,
So I'm really glad you said it's SEO and targeting based. So this is something I've learned is sometimes I'll have guests come on and they'll be like, hey, I want to get leads in my market. I'm like, I got you. Don't worry about it. I got you. So then we'll do the whole episode and I'll kind of frame it around these questions. But what I'll do is I've done it a few times now. The one that comes offhand right now is last one I did was the dude's out of Tulsa. So I'm like investing in single family homes in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And that's the title of the episode with his name.
Yeah. I like it. Again, like even podcasting is SEO driven. It's all based on the titles. It's not necessarily like, because the way social media and like, if you take social media as a whole, and then you take podcast, YouTube as a whole, the algorithms in which you get found are so much different from each other, because social media is all based on the content, which is dictated of the retention rate, the click-through rates, that sort of thing. That does have a factor within like the reachability on YouTube and podcasts, but the way you get found is by like your titling, the show notes that are in your, in your content, in the description, the body of the podcast show notes and that sort of thing, the tags and that sort of thing. That's how you get found. And then it's now the consumer's choice to continue to consume that or whatever. But getting found is like one of the hardest parts of content. So yeah, I mean, that's good. I'm glad you did that. It's kind of clever.
It's funny because me as a host, I have to know what their end goal is, and then whoever my
Sure.
guest is. So I'm always trying to
Sure. No, that's good.
me as a host. I have to produce a good product,
Yeah.
So whatever that end goal is, let's make it happen. I
like it.
got it. So let's talk about this. I know you've had some. I've heard some of your client list that have had great success with you. Can we talk about some like testimonials for you from your current client list through your social media, podcast, all that stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've gotten to work with some absolute rock stars in our industry. Some of the biggest names in our industry that you could imagine, that even I look at and I'm like, whoa, I got to work with that person. That's insane. And a lot of times too, like what you'll find, dude, is that like big name is very subjective. So for instance, if I say the name like Ron LeGrand, I've worked with Ron LeGrand on his content. That's a big name to a hell of a lot of people that are in the real estate investing space. But then there's some people like, yeah, but he's an older guy and he typically works with like people that are doing like those type of deals and stuff like that. It's not really my flavor. That's the thing you'll hear, right? So like there's subjectivity to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest highlights that I could give is like I think you know who Michael Zuber is. He's out of Fresno, California, I believe. And he has a brand called One Rental at a Time. And he started that literally. So he was my first client I ever had. And he's still with me to this day, 5 years later. And we have gotten his podcast. We're about to cross 10 million downloads on the One Rental at a Time podcast. He's built a really good YouTube channel and that sort of thing. But like his model too, this is where I come in and say like everybody's content models are just so much different from each other. Like every single one of my clients, they do different deliverables. Like I literally build, when I get on a call with somebody that's potentially going to work with me, I ask all about what they're trying to accomplish first and about their business, as opposed to like, if people say, can you send me a package? Like what does your packages look like? Like, I don't got a package, because what I do for Daniel won't be the same that I do for Ron LeGrand, won't be the same that I do for Michael Zuber. Like it's different for everybody because it's all built around what you're trying to accomplish. And so like with Michael, his model is volume. So he puts out 2 to 3 core YouTube videos a day, 2 to 3 core podcast episodes a day. And you might think like, that's a lot of content. And it is, it's a lot, but it's the model that works for him and has done extremely well. So he's a golden child of mine, somebody that I really have had the pleasure of working with. He's gotten on some really big stages. He's gotten some really big names to be on his podcast and that sort of thing. And he's made some really big headway with that. We work with if you're in the real estate investing industry, chances are you've probably heard of Collective Genius. They're a great, mastermind to be a part of in the real estate investing space. And we've worked with them now for 3 years, I believe 3.5 years, something like that. And the purpose of their content is, it's very simple. Like, Jason Medley is the CEO of Collective Genius. And when we were onboarding them as a client, this is again where I come in and say, like, it's all about the objectives and the goals that you're trying to accomplish with what you do. And he was very clear. He's like, I don't care about views. I don't care about subscribers. I don't care about followers. I don't care about clicks or anything like that. I just want qualified leads to fill out applications to be a part of the mastermind. That's it. And he was very clear too that he didn't want to be the face of the brand. Like he wanted the members to be the face of the brand, because ultimately in a mastermind, the members is what sells the mastermind. It's not necessarily the CEO, the guy running it. It's the members part of it. Now, Jason's a rock star in himself as well, but that's a client that we've worked with for quite a while that I'm like, they've had some tremendous success because of, being very clear of their objective is to just get qualified applications through the door, and it works. The methodology works really, really well. So those are a couple that I point out, but we worked with many, many people in our space, and you probably know a good chunk of them, maybe over even half, 75% of my clients that I've worked with, and all great people. So, but all in the real estate investing space. So every person that I work with is in this space. We are starting to make efforts to go into different industries, but there's just so much to go around in this industry that at this point I've been in it for, 12 going on 13 years. So it just makes sense to stay here. So
I like the niche part of it because the creatives you need to make based off of whatever they're trying to do. Like
right.
if you did a restaurant business, you might not think of everything. You might not
The
be able to
art.
serve that customer that as well
Yeah.
because you don't know the creatives you need to do for this. But
Yep.
for real estate, you're like boom, 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 because this is what you've known for the last 10 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're 100% spot on to stay in the space and just target these people.
Yeah, it's important.
And the other thing too is you always want to service people that pay.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part, dude. Like I heard something. I'm not a huge fan of Grant Cardone, but he said something one time that like really rattled me, and it was early on in my business career where I was like, that's extreme. It's one of those things like Grant Cardone says a lot of things that like are really like blunt, straightforward, and simple that like, okay, that's like a very bonehead thing, but it makes a whole lot of sense. And he literally says like, who's got my money? That's what I kind of I'm like, who has the money that I need to support my business and go in the direction that I want to. Early on, it was like, and no offense if you're a realtor, but early on it was like I would work with just about any realtor, but then I would have to chase them down to pay their invoices. They would nickel and dime me. They would negotiate the services. I got to a point where like, I'm just not going to work with any realtors ever again, unless they're the broker owner and they actually have the money to deal with it. And so now as a real estate investor, they have money. They have the ability to expand their marketing budgets because the profit margins are so much bigger than almost any other industry you could deal with. So that's the truth in it, man. It's a hard truth, but like for me, I'd rather work with a small amount of clients that bring in the most amount of money as possible, as opposed to a lot of clients that bring in a little bit of money, you know?
Absolutely. I really want to highlight that because a lot of people, there's a lot of business opportunities out there, but some of them aren't meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to find your own niche clientele that are willing to pay your pricing that you're willing to serve, that you're serving to the community. So I think it's 100%. Right. What is a quote that is yours or somebody else's that you resonate with?
That I resonate with. Oh man, that's a pop-up question there, man. I wouldn't say I wouldn't say so. Like I'm horrible at memorization. Like the school we went to, like when we had to memorize the Bible verses, I would fail that every time. I would read it like literally right before I was supposed to get up, make sure I had it, and then do as best I could. But one of the things, again, that I learned early on in my career is that I've experienced where I stopped doing this and needed to make sure I started it back up because I started to see things slide a little bit, is never stop learning and growing. Because as soon as you stop learning and growing, you think that you've made it to the destination you're at, and you're like, this is where I wanted to be. And then normally, like, and I did this like early last year, I got to a point where I was like, I'm happy, man. Like, this is great. I'm going to chill for a little bit. And I did, and things started to just kind of come back down, and I got humbled a little bit. My good friend Gary Harper's like, you need to get your butt back in gear, start like, because he's like, I haven't seen you on a stage speak in a while. You haven't been on podcasts. You haven't done much content yourself. Like, make sure you get back out there. So that was something that I like made sure that I kind of, I'm glad it didn't last as long as it could have, but that's important. And the second thing I would say too, that I'm thinking about this is my good friend, Trevor Mock, CEO of Carrot, Investor Carrot website, hosting platform. Yeah. He's also a client of ours, but he said something one time. I went to they have this annual event called Carrot Camp that they have like 10 to 15 people go to at a time out there at their headquarters in Roseburg, Oregon. And I went there, and this was like the first time I ever heard this said, and it was very humbling. But this was like 2 years after I went into business. This is now 3 years ago, three and a half years ago. And he said, remember when you had what you, remember when you wanted what you have now. Remember when you wanted what you have now. And I thought about that. And at that point, I was like, it was towards the end of the year. And as a service provider, you know, you start to lose a little bit of clients at the end of the year, just like they're making changes, budget shifts, stuff like that. And then normally it ramps back up after like January or so. And that was one of my first dips in business where I was starting to feel a little bit of pressure. And I was like, man, this like I was playing, the sorry game and that sort of thing. And then Trevor was teaching and it was just perfect timing. And I was like, yeah, you know what? Like I should be grateful for what I have. Because there was a time where I really, really wanted these problems. And it's the whole thing of like, that was, I forget what the statement is, but it's basically like, if you gather up a bunch of people and you throw your problems into a pile, you're going to chase yours down to go get it back, like, because your problems, you know how to deal with them and that sort of thing. So that was something that was really humbling to me. That was like, kind of a slap in the face that I've tried to stick with like my entire life, so.
There you go. Nah, I think it's good, man. A lot of people, you don't want other people's problems. You really don't.
I don't. I really don't. I don't want your problems, Daniel.
Sorry. I won't tell you them then. For everybody here, I think I wanted to hear. I appreciate you coming on. I got CullerMedia.com. Definitely go check them out. Doing a lot of good service for a lot of good people. Any final thoughts?
No, man. I love what you're doing here. Like, I appreciate you getting me on the show. You're going to be on my show. So if it's cool if I plug mine coming up, we're going to be relaunching it. So we had a podcast going. It's called the REI Marketing Weekly. That went for a good 150 episodes, I believe. Mm-hmm. And it's still there. So if you want to go check it out, all the podcast platforms, it's still there. REI Marketing Weekly. Still a lot of relevant conversations and content there. But we're starting that back up. Depending on when this interview goes out, it should be like the middle of June, like a couple weeks from now, that we're going to relaunch it. So Daniel's going to be on that show. I think we have a recording later this week for that. So go check that out, the REI Marketing Weekly. But I appreciate your time, man. It's been great seeing you get to where you're at, and given the stories that we both have come from. A lot of fun stories, but it's been great seeing you. Like, I love seeing my friends succeed and continue to, grow in what they're doing. And my only regret is that you and I don't work together more. So we'll have to, or not even just work together. Like, we don't get to hang out and talk, that much anymore. Just, cause you had to move away from Northwest Indiana cause you're cold for whatever reason. So
it was time. It was time.
I feel you.
Time. For everybody here, go like, share, subscribe, share with a friend. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good day, guys. Bye. Hey, if you'd like to meet us in person, we do an annual event every year, thehiveislive.com/summit. We'll see you there. Have a good day.